So we are now live, the Banquet of Life Facebook group, and welcome to Paul Lowe, D Lowe, should I say, the one and only. He and I crossed paths, was it last year, through the World Game Changers, program, and I was invited, cordially invited to do a podcast interview, which I really, really enjoyed. Paul is very adept at doing interviews. So I have a real pleasure in welcoming him here today to talk about the current subject of hope, the power of hope. And so he says he has a lot of experience, and I'm sure he has a lot of inspirational words to share with us to help lift us up out of our quagmire, out of maybe any doom and gloom that we seem to see all around us, especially with COVID and with the threat of more restrictions and lockdowns. And so the important point is to cling on to hope, because as you know, we go through troughs in our life and there are always upturns, but hope actually is that fuel to keep us going and to say that there will be a better future or better moments ahead of us, and just to believe and trust in that. So welcome, Paul, and I will just start off with, how do you define hope? So what's your understanding of hope?
Firstly, Esther, thank you very much for inviting me. I really relish opportunities to, irrespective of what the topic matter is, that because I think there's great energy and great vibrancy and great love, because that's the catalyst. We can single out words like hope and faith and trust, or whatever it may be, but ultimately the catalyst for it, the real catalyst is awareness, because if we're not aware of anything, how do we even know what we're talking about? I mean, that has to be, for me personally, the starting point of anything and everything that we do is awareness. So that's the kind of big umbrella. And then sitting very prominently under that awareness umbrella is this thing called love, whatever that's perceived to be. And I'm sure as the conversation unfolds between us, that'll we'll look at that from many different perspectives. But love and awareness really are the seniors within the family of words, because words are so important to us, aren't they? In the language we use, the energy of certain words, the way we speak about these words, the context, and I think sometimes as humans we kind of go in autopilot, and then we'll say something and it's like, well, Esther, you know what I mean, you know what I meant to say, and well actually no, I don't. And there's that kind of whole, as I say, autopilot approach of, oh yeah, you do, and I think it's just about sort of taking that backward step and reframing the language. So bringing it back to hope. Hope is what I see, if we start as love. Love is the mother of faith and the grandmother of hope. So we've got this trilogy of love, faith, and hope.
I'm just making notes because obviously I like that. Lovely. Thank you for sharing that. And how does hope make a difference to our lives in that respect, given this triad?
I'm going to play, in everything that we are, there is this perceived duality. The paradox of oneness is there is this duality or perceived duality. So for the lightness that goes with hope, there is, maybe, I offer this as a suggestion, the darkness. Hope, and I'm going to kind of, as a foundation, Esther, I'm going to recite back something that I've heard many, many, many times. Hope's no good, Paul. It's too wishy-washy. It's too flimsy. It's too, what's hope? It's not strong enough. It's too weak. Okay, so if that is the more contrasting side of duality, where hope on the one hand, is a big bright light of the way forward, lighting the path up, if you will. But the contradiction on that is, no, it's weak, it's indefinable, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, well, let's look at it from a seemingly more darker perspective then, or lesser perspective. Well, if we can start off with hope on that very low level way of looking at things, then surely the only way is up. And it's a great foundation. And when I say the only way is up, I actually, in former life, formed a company called UPP, Unleash Personal Power. So if we're in a stage where we're really, really clutching for something because our world is dark, it's desperate, whatever the context is, the only way is up. So even for those of us that might say, well, hope is, it's not really strong enough. It's, and I keep using the term wishy-washy. Well, even with that, that's a great starting point, because if that is our starting point, right, okay, so let's start at that foundation point and build it from there. And let's move up from the gears, and let's go from hope into faith, into love. And it also brings in something called beliefs, because hope can be a very, very powerful seed to plant when we're really desperate. And I can speak from experience on more than one occasion over many years for this, where I've literally been clinging to anything I could just to stay alive. And that seed of hope that we can then nurture into a belief. So there's nothing stands in isolation, and it's kind of propounding very, very it's propounding that point, really, Esther, that it's about the story that we tell ourselves. So yes, we could single out a word like hope or faith or love or trust, but really it's understanding that bigger part, that it's all part of a story we tell ourselves. The choice we have is, do we tell ourselves a self-empowering story or not? I think it's very important to put words in the context of, is this going to serve me, irrespective of what the word is. And hope for me personally is a very powerful one in my story.
It's all about choice, isn't it? The choice how we want to live our life and the approach we take to it. So how has hope played a key role in your life? You've created this campaign to change the world. So what, how much of a role has hope played in that?
It's been monumental in that, because my hope from an early age, that making sense of my life, my purpose, if you will, was I would leave the world a better place. I would contribute in some way. And I'm going back to early childhood, where I had neither the emotion or the intellectual capacity or maturity to understand any of these words I'm now speaking to you. But there was something inside me that burned, that says, you've got to do this. You've got to do this. And I'm talking on the back of a suicide attempt at 13 and a half. And then years of subsequent addiction and darkness and confusion and desperation. But there was something there. And I think the part of the awareness raising, Esther, is to understand or to accept that when we look at the more human side of who we are, we're always looking for that certainty, that definite. When we look at the 6 human needs psychology model of Robbins, that first thing is that need for certainty. We want certainty. And the more we can let go of that, and, that control, I will have it my way. It will be this way. The more we can let go of that and embrace that faith-driven, what will be, will be, there's some real metaphoric pots of gold to be found there, because by definition, we're going to areas where we've never been before. So how do we know what's there? that voyage of self-discovery. But that takes a little bit of courage, you might say.
Yes, it's almost a little bit getting a little bit more comfortable and less fearful about uncertainty, isn't it? Because in uncertainty comes the experience of growth and potential for expansion, isn't it?
Yeah, but isn't the reality when you look at things, whether it's our individual lives or listening to other people speak, that the one certainty is change. But I'd throw in, actually, no, that cliche is not true. The other certainty we have in our life is fear.
Yeah.
We have fear in our lives, and it's been there from day one. And obviously, much has been flagged up recently around the last 15 months of the COVID pandemic. My take upon that, without not wishing to appear insensitive or disrespectful for anybody that's suffered, because I think to varying degrees we all have, to some degree or other, and some obviously a lot more than others, and being extremely sensitive and respectful about that. But then sort of saying, okay, yes, however, there's something that's been with us, a pandemic that's been with us from time immemorial, and it's called fear. What are we really going to do about that?
Yeah.
So to propound the point as from, yes, obviously I know that the focal point of this dialogue, this dance, is around hope, but nothing stands in isolation. That unity that we allude to so much, and it's the same with words.
Yeah. And I think in the work that you do, how is it you engender or lift people up, give them that hope, take them away from that fear-driven place, that, where they're only, the whole existence is just, based on fear? I mean, do you have a sort of like a toolbox of things, that you can use to help people?
Yeah, and toolbox, fantastic question, because I think, again, as humans, craving that certainty, we're all searching for that one thing, that one relationship, that one, career move, that one thing. I think the marketing term is it's silver bullet. We're looking for that silver bullet. It doesn't exist. It does not exist. But that's part of our need for certainty. Let me make life so simple that there is one solution fits all.
Doesn't exist. Doesn't exist.
But isn't that part of our human mindset, that we're looking and searching for that constantly, until we raise our awareness around conversations like this, for example, to know that it doesn't actually exist. And that takes us back into the antidote for certainty, which is uncertainty again. And it's this whole balance and dance in life that we embrace, isn't it? And the paradox of oneness is duality. We can speak very philosophically about we're all one. Okay, yes. On a quantum physics level, yes. But try telling the average man or woman in the street that's got, they've just lost the job, or the marriage has just failed, or whatever the situation is. It's like, listen, I've got 5 kids to feed and a mortgage to pay, and that's a lovely, fluffy philosophy. But what is the bottom line? And the bottom line is to support people, Esther, to answer your question, to support people. And I love what you said about a toolbox of strategies where, we start at the bottom. What is the reality? We don't shy away from this bully called fear. We look it straight in the eye and say, okay, the world may be falling apart now, or perceiving to be, through your eyes because of your challenges. Okay, that's our starting point. Let's not sugarcoat it. Just look it straight in the eye like any bully, and let's face it head on, because then the only way is up.
Yeah, totally get that. We have to meet people where they're at. So if it is at the lower levels, what we call in the angelic method, this low vibration, right? Where they are so fearful, so much in despair, and of anything changing for the positive. But it's just meeting them there and being that sort of source of comfort and inspiration and hope. As you say, hope that, that we can get them a little bit in a better place. Just by listening to them, first of all, isn't it? And
Absolutely.
Making them feel as though they're understood, isn't it? Because in that there's some healing already, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a whole mix of what in technical terms might be classed as strategies or what have you. But the reality is, it's knowing that somebody actually really does care. Forget the tactics, forget the strategies, forget the tools. I really have come to know that life is a very, very simple game. It really is a simple game, and it revolves around predominantly one thing. That's called love.
Love, yeah.
That's
Which
it.
Then, yeah, it makes us more compassionate as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, and when we look at the various levels of love, I know there's different models out there, and that's another thing with certainty, Esther, isn't it? We create these mind models, things that, I've done it in the past where I was known as the acronym king, because I had an acronym for everything. There was like mental stepping stones to give me that certainty, which kind of then acted against all the insecurity and uncertainty and fear that was in my life. I went on an 11-year academic journey to a very high level because it gave me a piece of paper that said, oh, this guy has got this, that, and the other. But it was all about overcoming the fear. And the reality is now, it's just that understanding of, even like on my podcast or whatever, or the language I use, I use words like flirt, love-related words, dance, the energy that goes with that. And it makes, if I can sort of, the risk of sort of sounding more polarized in genders, it makes the more masculine energies laugh when they've got another guy talking about flirting and dancing and love, but there's this science in kind of breaking that down to sort of say, listen, whatever body you're in is kind of irrelevant. The energy is all important, as you know. Esther. And even with that, it's all about connecting, and it's about using those words and that context. What story are we telling? The power of metaphors when we communicate is immense. And simple things like, so I had a conversation about 2 months ago with a guy that was recommended to me, and we came on, and there was that kind of initial caution, I suppose, and we got onto the theme of big boys don't cry, and I said, "Do you really believe that?" He said, "Yeah, definitely. You've got to remain strong." So using metaphoric insights, well, when you look at the winds of life and how strongly they blow, and a bamboo, it may blow a bamboo to the ground, but because of its flexibility, it will come back to its original place. A staunch, solid oak tree that stands there rigid and unrepaired. What about when that gets uprooted? When that's uprooted, it's gone. It's gone completely. And so there's this great dance that takes place in life, isn't there? This, if we can embark upon that stage and this whole flow between embracing this masculine and feminine energy that's within all of us and raising that awareness and that acceptance to say, okay, I might perceive myself to be an alpha male guy, but what about this other part in me? What about this, and I'll use the term softer side of this divine feminine? And of course, in my humble opinion, it's not the softer side. It's a powerful side, but it's part of who we are. There is no judgment on which is stronger, weaker, better, worse. These are the mental constructs that we create in our mind, aren't they?
Yeah, so true. It's funny that you mentioned this, and I always believe in, there is no coincidence. And this morning I had a bit of a download moment. I was thinking, reclaim the power through the feminine, so to try and redress the balance. And I've had that literally burning in my head. And it's funny that you mention all this, because for so long even women have been trying to force the masculine, isn't it, to level the playing field, especially in the corporate world. And it's all wrong, really, because we need to really tap into our true feminine powers. And that's where, but in the balance, so that we're not negating the masculine, but we are very much, bringing the two back in equilibrium. So yeah, it's interesting that you see it from a male perspective as well, to correct that too. So because we're no different with the feminine, in the corporate world, we're very much pushing, trying to think that we're going to be successful, we're going to be equals to the male counterparts by pushing more into the masculine. And actually that's counterproductive, isn't it? And yeah, so interesting. I know we've gone a little bit divergent from hope, but it's still a very prevalent message, isn't it, at the moment?
Very much so. And, kind of going back to the top of the conversation around nothing stands in isolation. We don't stand in isolation as people. The words that we use don't stand in isolation, but it kind of goes back to that need and that craving for certainty. I've got a word here and I'm going to define it to the nth degree, and that's going to be it. No, it isn't. It never, ever is going to be. And hope, it doesn't matter what the word is. As powerful as love is, as powerful, I mean, ultimately for me personally, awareness is the big one. No coincidence that it starts with A. I've got
in the alphabet.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a simple ABC, because the distillation of...
Don't tell me B means beliefs.
Well, fairly obvious, yeah. So, there's this kind of whole void, like I've said before, this whole voyage of self-discovery, and play with it and flirt with it and enjoy it. But that can be difficult when, we're at the bottom of the mountain looking up. And I think most of us, to varying degrees, can testify to that we've had some very, very extreme or challenging situations of, darkness. I did for decades. So when I communicate, when I connect with people, I'm very, very mindful and empathic towards, okay, people say, oh, it's all right for you, Paul, with all these fancy words. Right, well, that's a real sort of check. Okay, so I'm not reaching, we're not connecting here then. And that's just that readjustment of the dance to say, well, as you said earlier on quite rightly, how can I meet you where you're at? Because it's always about the other.
It's something I have to make sure that I'm doing, because I can so easily be sort of at that higher level, and awareness in terms of that sense, and also raising my energy through energy practices. But I forget then sometimes, when the people I want to help most actually are the ones that are obviously several degrees lower, in terms of their energy. And I just need to understand that, and just literally rewind a bit to see where I was at that point, how did it feel, so that I can empathize and really understand and show them comfort and show them hope and a way forward. So so tell me more about how people can link up with you, and if they want to get a little bit more understanding about all these ideas, and the fact that you're on this major mission. I know it's a very, very important mission, that we're to help and to inspire others to, it's not all about self-improvement, but it's all about self-awareness, isn't it? So how can people connect with you, and what is it that how can you tangibly help them?
Well, those before I share that sort of contact detail as to what you've said, the kind of there's one or two things in there, and the paradox for me yet again is this: we go on this voyage of self-discovery, and to that acceptance of we're everything, but we're nothing.
Yeah.
And there's all these different ways. So it's actually about tell me your story. What story is it you want to create? I created one for many years of a hard drinking, hard hitting Irishman. That was part of my identity. Now, the reality is I'm actually English. I've got Irish heritage. But it gave me that sense of, that identity. And yet again, going back to the beliefs, this is the power of beliefs. So we go on this voyage of discovery. I keep using that terminology, and it's appropriate, of, creating this story. So with World Game Changers, the movement is very simple: to leave the world a better place, to contribute towards leaving the world a better place. That's it. There's no massive, great, ego-driven statement about we are going to change the world. We may not. Who knows? That's there are powers greater than us that will determine. I think I'm a great believer in we are called to serve, and part of that is we have to let go of our ego, our human self-importance, of what we think we are, and all that kind of thing. So within World Game Changers, which has become very much a path that I'm heavily involved with, and a great number of other people from around the world. And it's just to simply shine as bright as we can and radiate that warmth of love. And I love this quote from Anne Lamott when she said, lighthouses do not go chasing over life's seas, looking for people to save. They simply stand there and shine. And I think that's a beautiful quote. And, for us as humans, just shine as brightly as you can, because somewhere along the line, that will put brightness into people's lives and create some kind of legacy. And I know I'm kind of, you've asked me for a contact detail essentially here, Esther, but I just want to kind of really propound this, much is said around that other word, legacy. And we don't actually know what our legacy is. And I love this example from Maya Angelou, who was Oprah Winfrey's mentor. When Oprah came in, this was a few years ago, and said to Maya Angelou, she said, Maya, this fantastic thing, a new school for girls in Africa, it's going to be my greatest legacy ever. And Maya Angelou, she said, no, it's not. No, it's not. Yeah, it is. Look at the numbers and this and that and the other, blah, 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 blah. She said, no, it's not. She said, you don't know what your legacy is. Your legacy is that stranger you smiled at the street this morning. Oh. Maybe that's somebody you gave that little random act of kindness to. Just that look, that touch, that few words of, or whatever it may be. And you may never ever see that person again. That is going to be your legacy. Mm-hmm. And that is the catalyst, really, for Esther, for us. And we talk about identity, or I've flirted with identity around using that title, World Game Changers, because the reality is each and every single one of us already here now, this moment in time, is a world game changer. Part of that awareness raising exercise is to come to know that. In terms of reaching out, there's two ways. The charitable side of what we do is worldgamechangers.org. We have a website there, and so people can reach out there. And for me, on a more personal level, my brand, Paul D Lowe, that's paul-lowe.com.
Okay, brilliant. So I want to thank you very much for your words of wisdom and for sharing that, because I've certainly learned some things. And coming back to your last message is that, I think there's a famous quote somewhere that we have to be the ripple effect of the change that we want to see in the world. So if each one of us can raise our game just a little bit and pour some light into somebody else's world through a simple smile or a random act of kindness, as you say, then we've already left a legacy. We've already made put our footprint in the sand.
Yeah. And just on that note, a simple pebble, Esther, a simple pebble, and two very contrasting effects of it. So one of them could be a pebble in a shoe causing pain to somebody. The other one could be just a simple pebble where we drop it in a pond and, like you say, it ripples. We have a choice to define what kind of pebble we want to become in life.
That's a lovely metaphor. Thank you. I know you said you love your metaphors. So thank you very much. That's a wonderful metaphor to finish this interview on. And thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for spending some precious time with us and for sharing with the rest of us. I know a couple of people have jumped on. I think Carolyn, thank you. Good morning for watching. And hopefully other people will catch up on the replay. I know it's not in everybody's perfect time zone. So thank you so much. And it's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Esther. My pleasure too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.